3 prayers. There you go, talking about God, Anastasía, but how do you pray? Or do you pray at all? Many people have requested in their letters that I ask you about this. Vladimir, how do you understand the word pray? What do you mean how? Isn't it obvious? To pray, that's, well, to pray. Are you telling me you don't understand the meaning of the word? One and the same word can mean different things to different people, depending on how they perceive it. To be able to express myself more understandably, I ask you, what does prayer mean to you? I never really thought about what it means, somehow. Anyway, there is one principal prayer I learned by heart, and sometimes I say it, just, to be on the safe side. Apparently there must be some meaning in it if so many people say it. What are you telling me? You memorized a prayer and never wanted to find its meaning? It's not that I didn't want to, it's just that I never really thought about its meaning. I thought, well, everybody knows what it means, so why bother thinking? Prayer, well, that's just like having a conversation with God. But if this principal prayer signifies a conversation with God, then tell me, how can you talk with God, your Father, without any meaning? I don't know how. What's all this big fuss, anyway, about this meaning? No doubt the people who wrote the prayer knew what it meant. But would you not like to talk with your Father on your own? Of course, everybody would like to talk with their Father on their own. But how can you talk on your own by repeating someone else's words, especially without even thinking about what lies behind them? At first I felt a little irritated at Anastasía's pickiness regarding the meaning of the prayer I had learned. But then I got interested myself in determining what it meant. For the thought was coming to me all by itself. How did this happen? I had learned a prayer which I repeated on a number of occasions, but never really thought about what was in the prayer. I thought how interesting it would be to find this out, since I had memorized it, and I said aloud to Anastasía, well, okay, I'll give thought to the meaning at some point. But she persisted. Why at some point? Could you not say your prayer right here and now? Why not? Of course I can. Then, Vladimir, say your prayer. The one you term all your prayers, the principal one. The one through which you have tried to talk with the Father. As a matter of fact, it's the only one I know. And I only learned it because it seems everybody else considers it the most important one. All right, say your prayer, and I shall keep track of your thought. Okay, listen. I said the Lord's Prayer to Anastasía, which, you may remember, goes like this. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, always, now, and forever. Amen. I stopped speaking and looked at Anastasía, but she was sitting there, just as silently, her eyes lowered, not looking at me. She just sat there without a word, with a sad expression on her face, until I couldn't take it any longer and asked her, Why aren't you saying anything, Anastasía? Without raising her head, she inquired, What words are you expecting to hear from me, Vladimir? What do you mean, what words? I said the prayer without even a single flaw. Did you like it? You could at least say so if you did or not, but you're not saying a word. When you were saying the prayer, Vladimir, I tried to follow your thought, your feelings, the meaning of your appeal to God. I understood the meaning of the words of the prayer, but you did not understand all the words in it. Your newly budding thought was disintegrating away from you, and there were absolutely no feelings. You were unable to grasp the meaning of many of the words, and you were not addressing yourself to anyone. You were simply muttering. But I just said it the way everybody does. I was in church, and they use even more incomprehensible words. I heard how other people say it. They rattle it off at top speed, and that's it. But I said it to you slowly and distinctly so you'd understand. But before that, you said it was a prayer addressed to God. Yes, I did say that. But God is our Father. He is a person. He is a living entity. The Father is capable of feeling and understanding when normal communication is initiated. But you, what about me? I'm telling you, that's the way they all say it when they address God. Imagine your daughter Paulina is standing before you, and all at once she starts talking in a monotone and slips into her sentences words she does not even understand herself. Would you as a father be pleased by her talking to you in such a way? I could picture the situation quite clearly and began to feel downright uncomfortable at the prospect. Here was my daughter standing in front of me, muttering something like a half-crazed person, not knowing what she wanted even. So I came to a decision. No, I had to make conscious sense of my prayer. I can't just rattle off meaningless words. Otherwise, I would appear to God like some half-crazed idiot. If someone wants to mutter it, they can go ahead. As for me, I shall definitely make the effort to understand the whole prayer. I only have to find some place to look up the meaning of unfamiliar words. And why do they speak in some unknown language in church? Aloud, I said to Anastasía, "You know, it's probably not a full and accurate translation. That's why my thought got lost, as you say." Vladimir, the meaning can be understood even from this translation. Of course, it contains words that are not used any longer in everyday speech, but the sense is clear when you ponder it and decide what is the most important thing of all for you, and what is the most pleasing for the Father. What is it you wish to say in uttering this prayerful message addressed to the Father? Well, whatever the words say, that's probably what I want to say too. I want Him to give me bread to eat, to forgive my sins and debts, to not lead me into temptation and deliver me from evil. It's all clearly set out there. Vladimir, God provided food for His sons and daughters even before they were born. Look around you. Everything has long ago been provided for you. A loving parent forgives everyone their sins without being asked, and does not even think of leading anyone into temptation. The Father has given each one the capacity to withstand the wiles of evil. Why offend the Father by not realizing what He has already provided a long time ago? His eternal gifts are all around you. What more can this loving parent give, who has already given all to His child? And what if there's something missing? God gives to the utmost. He has provided everything for His sons and daughters right from the beginning. Everything, completely. As a parent who loves his child unconditionally, he can think of no greater good for himself than the joy which comes from the joyful existence of his children, his sons and daughters. Tell me, Vladimir, how might the Father feel after giving his children everything right from the beginning and seeing them appear before him, constantly pleading, "More, more! Keep us, save us, we are all helpless, we are all as nothing." Please answer me. Would you as a parent or any of your friends wish to have children like that? I can't give you an answer right off. I'll work it out on my own when I have a quiet moment. Yes, of course, fine, Vladimir. Only when you do find the time, think about what the Father would like to hear from you apart from your requests. You mean God might also want something of us? What? What any parent would wish to hear from his children. Tell me, Anastasía, do you yourself ever turn to God in prayer? Yes, I do, came her reply. Then tell me your prayer. I cannot say my prayer to you, Vladimir. My prayer is destined for God. All right, talk to God then. I can still hear it. Anastasía rose, spread out her arms, turned her back to me, and began uttering some words. Ordinary words one might hear in a prayer, but something within me all at once began to tremble. The way she spoke these words was not the way we say prayers. She spoke them the way anyone might talk to a close friend, a loved one, a relative. Her speech contained all the intonations of a live conversation, passion, joy, fervent ecstasy, as though the one Anastasía was talking to was right there beside her. My Father, you are present everywhere. For the light of life I gladly thank you, for your bright kingdom visible here and now, and for your loving will. Long live the good. For my daily bread and daily food with joy I thank you. and for your loving patience, and for your giving of forgiveness of sins on your earth fair. My Father, you are present everywhere. I am your daughter, here midst your creations. Weakness and sin I shall not let them in, but prove myself worthy of your consummations. My Father, you are present everywhere. I am your daughter, your joy I declare. My entire self shall magnify your glory. In your bright dream the coming ages will all live and share. It shall be so, I wish it so, I am a daughter of yours. My Father, you are present everywhere. Anastasía ended her prayer. She continued to communicate with everything around her. It seemed as though she were surrounded by a radiant light. During the prayer, as long as she was near me, something invisible happened all around. And whatever it was touched me too. It wasn't an outward touch, but an inner one. It made me feel good, feel comforted. But as Anastasía drew away, this effect faded, and I called out after her. You said the prayer as though someone was standing beside you who could answer it. Anastasía turned toward me, her face beaming. She spread out her arms, spun around, smiling, and then, giving me a serious look in the eye, said, Vladimir, God, our Father, also speaks to everyone with a request, and answers every prayer. Then why doesn't anyone understand his words? Words? The peoples of the earth have so many words with different meanings. There are so many diverse languages and dialects, and yet there is one language for all. One language for all divine callings. It is woven together out of the rustling of leaves, the song of the birds, and the roar of the waves. The divine language has fragrance and color. Through this language, God responds to each one's requests and gives a prayerful response to prayer. Could you translate or express in words what he says to us? I could give you an approximation. Why just an approximation? Because our language is much too poor to be compatible with the language God speaks to us in. Never mind, just tell me anyway you can. Anastasía looked at me, stretched her arms out in front of her, and her voice came forth in chest tones. My son, my own dear son, how long I have been waiting. I am still waiting. A minute holds 100 years, a moment lasts millennia. I am waiting. I have given you all. The earth is all yours. You are free in everything. You shall choose your own path. All that I ask, my son, my own dear son, is that you be happy. You do not see me. You do not hear me. In your mind are doubts and sorrows. You are turning away. Where to? You are yearning for something. What for? And you are bowing to someone. I stretch out my hand to you, my son. My own dear son, be happy, I ask of you. Again, you are going away. But your road leads to nowhere. On this road, the earth will explode. You are free in everything, and the world is exploding and tearing your destiny apart. You are free in everything, but I shall stand my ground. I shall restore you to life with the last blade of grass, and once more the world will shine around. Only be happy, I ask. On the faces of saints a deep sorrow swells. You are frightened by the judgment in hell, but tell you that I shall send judges. But I only pray for that time, as before, when you and I are together once more. I believe you will return. I know you will come. I shall embrace you once more, not as a stepfather, not as a stepfather. I am yours. I am your Abba, your father, the only one, and you are my very own son, my own dear son. We shall be happy together as one. After Anastasía stopped speaking, it took me a while to recover my composure. Even though it seemed that I was continuing to listen to all the sounds around me, perhaps I was really listening to how my blood was rushing through my veins at an extraordinary tempo. What had I understood? I cannot understand even to this day. Through this fervent interpretation, Anastasía had just set forth God's prayer to man. Whether the words were true or not, who can say? And who can say why they arouse such strong emotions? And what am I doing at the moment? I am letting my pen run across the page in conscious excitement, or maybe not so conscious. Am I going out of my mind? Am I mixing up her words with those the bards now sing in her name? Anything's possible. Perhaps those that read this will understand, and I shall try to understand once I have finished writing. And I am writing again, but again, just as back in the forest, as though penetrating a curtain, occasionally lines from those prayers I heard in the taiga will suddenly appear, and again the question arises, a difficult question which continues to torment me to this day. Through scenes from our lives and ponderings, a question I'm afraid to try to answer, even to myself. But it is not one I can keep back any longer within myself. Perhaps someone will come up with a convincing answer. Prayer. That prayer of Anastasia's. Just words. The words of a taiga recluse, an uneducated recluse, with her own unique way of thinking and her own unique lifestyle. Just words. But for some reason, every time I hear them, the veins on my writing hand puff up and the blood pulsates through them more quickly. It pulsates, counting off the seconds in which each of us must decide what is best for ourselves and how to continue to live. Should we be asking a kind Father to save, give, provide? Or alternatively, confidently and from the heart, suddenly declare, just as she did, "My Father, you are present everywhere. Weakness and sin, I shall not let them in. I am your Son, your joy, I declare. My entire self shall magnify your glory." Which prayer will have the most pleasant meaning for him? What should I do, or what should we all do together? Which way should we go? My Father, you are present everywhere. Weakness and sin, I shall not let them in. But where does one get the courage to speak like that, and to carry it out once the prayer's been said? Chapter 12. Anastasia's line. Tell me, Anastasia, how did it happen that you and your ancestors lived for so long, millennia even, in the remote forest away from society? If, as you say, all mankind is a single body and all have a single origin, then why is your ancestral line, in contrast to all the rest, a kind of outcast? You are right. We all have one parent, and then there are parents whom we can see. But every human soul has the freedom to choose his own path, leading to a determined goal. Among other things, the choice depends on how one's feelings are nurtured. And who then thus nurtured your distant forebears in such a way that your line is so distinctive even today? In your lifestyle, let's say, or in the way you understand things. It happened in times long ago. I know I said long ago, but it seems as though it happened only yesterday. Perhaps I can best put it this way. A time came when mankind aspired not to co-creation, but to analyzing God's creation. Back when spears were already flying and hides of faithful creatures were already considered worthy features on people's bodies, when everyone's consciousness was being altered and being directed along the path leading to today, when human thought faltered, aspiring not to creation but to the accumulation of knowledge. All at once, people began analyzing the process by which men and women were able to experience tremendous satisfaction by merging their bodies together. Then, for the first time, men began possessing the women, and women submitted to the men not for the sake of co-creation, but so that both of them could experience a satisfying sensation. It seemed to them, as it seems to people living today, that such a sensation comes afresh each time there is a merging of the male and female elements, their visible bodies, their flesh. In fact, the satisfaction from the merging of mere fleshy bodies is fleeting and incomplete. In the intercourse of carnal desires, there is no participation by the higher planes of the human self. Man aspired to feel a sense of fullness by changing bodies and methods of coming together. But even today he has not achieved anything fully. The sad consequence of these carnal pleasures has been their children. The children were deprived of conscious aspirations toward the goal of realization of the divine dream. And women began experiencing pain in childbirth. And the rising generation was doomed to live in torment. And the absence of the three planes of being meant they were afforded no opportunity of attaining happiness in any way. And so we have come down to the present day. One of the first women to experience pain in childbirth saw that her newborn baby girl had injured her little leg during the birth, and was so frail that she wasn't even able to utter a cry. The woman also saw that the man who enjoyed sexual pleasure with her remained indifferent to the birth, and was already seeking to pleasure himself with another woman. And so the woman who had chanced to become a mother became annoyed at God. She grabbed her newborn baby girl and ran with it with all her might, far away from everyone else, right into the middle of the woods, an isolated place where no one lived. Stopping to catch her breath in her despair, wiping her tears from her cheeks, she kept railing at God with words of frustrated anger. Why, in your resplendent world, as you describe it, is there pain and evil and repudiation? I do not experience any satisfaction when I turn to look at the world of your creation. I am in utter dejection, and I am burning up with anger. I have been rejected by everybody, and the one whom I made love to is now making love to another. He has forgotten about me, and you were the one who made them. See? He is yours, the one who was untrue and betrayed me. After all, she, the one making love to him, was also made by you. These are your creations, true? And what about me? I just want to strangle them. I am burning up with annoyance at them. Your world has become forlorn and joyless for me. What kind of fate did you select for me? And why did I bear this deformed and half-dead child? I do not want anyone to see it. There is no joy for me in contemplating it. The woman didn't just put the child down. She callously tossed the barely living lump, her own daughter, onto the ground. In her despair and anger, she again cried out to God, "Let no one ever lay eyes on my daughter. But you look and see the torments taking place among your creations. Her life is not to be. I shall not be able to feed the child that I have borne. My ill temper has burnt the milk in my breast. I'm going away. But you, look and see how many imperfections there are in the world you have created. Let your birth die in your sight. Let it die among the creations of the earth." At that, the mother ran from her own daughter, angry and forlorn. The newborn baby was left all alone, a barely breathing, helpless little lump lying on the wooded ground. My distant foremother was in that baby girl, Vladimir. God could feel the anger and despair coming from the earth. He felt the stress and compassionate care for that tearful, depressed woman. But the invisible Father who loved her was wearing a crown of God-bestowed freedom. Every man fashions the destiny of his own soul. The material plane of being is subject to no one. It is under the complete control of man himself. God is a person. He is not the Father of all, but he does not exist in the flesh. Not in the flesh. But in him there is a complex of all the diverse energies of the universe, a whole complex of feelings belonging to man. He can rejoice and he can feel distress. He can grieve over one of his sons or daughters who chooses a path leading to suffering. He glows with a tenderness to all and each day for all without exception. He caresses the whole earth with a sun ray of love. Day after day, he never loses hope that the daughters and sons of his conception will follow the divine path. Not under orders, not through fear. They will use their freedom of choice to determine their own path to conjoined creation, regeneration, and joy from its contemplation. Our Father has faith and waits, and he sustains life with his self. Our Father includes the whole complex of human feelings. Could anybody imagine how our Father, God, felt when his newborn child lay quietly dying there alone in his forest wild among his own creations? The baby girl did not cry. She did not even make a sound. The little heartbeat was slowing down. Just occasionally her tiny lips searched around for some life-giving nipple. She felt thirsty. God does not have hands of flesh. Even though he is all-seeing, he still could not clasp the baby girl to his breast. Having given everything to man, what more could he possibly give? And so, he who is capable of filling the whole universe with the energy of his dream, compressed himself into a lump of energy over that forest, a wee tiny lump capable of dispersing all the vast worlds of the universe at a single burst. He concentrated the energy of his love right over that forest, the love he expressed toward all his creations. Through them he embodied himself in his acts upon the earth, and a little drop of rain touched the lips of the baby girl, lying there on the ground, lips which were already turning blue, and at once a warm breeze blew. From the trees fell pollen dust, and the baby girl breathed it in. And the day went by, and the night came on, and the baby girl was still alive. All the beasts and creatures of the wild, embraced by a divine delight, recognized this baby girl as their own child. Years passed, the little girl grew and became a young woman. I can call her Lilith. As she strode over the ground, all bright in the sun's early rays, all the other life around called out her name in the gladness and praise. Lilith's smile illuminated and caressed the world God had created around her. Lilith accepted everything around her as she would accept our mother, or dad. As she strode over the ground, all bright in the sun's early rays, all other life around called out her name in gladness and praise. Lilith's smile illuminated and caressed the world God had created around her. Lilith accepted everything around her as we would accept our mother or dad. As she grew up, she would venture more and more often toward the edge of the forest. Quietly concealing herself amidst the tall grasses and bushes, she watched as people so similar in appearance to her went about their daily life. But what a strange life it was! They were distancing themselves more and more from God's creations, building houses to live in, cutting down everything around, and for some reason clothing themselves in animal hides. And they took great pride in killing God's creatures and boasting about who could most quickly kill their prize. And they kept on producing something out of dead matter. Back then, Lilith did not yet realize that people who created dead things out of living things considered themselves thereby to be very wise. She aspired to tell these people about the things that could bring joy to everyone. She very much desired a conjoint creation and the joy that comes from its contemplation. She felt an ever-growing need within her to bring about the birth of a new, living, divine creation. More and more frequently her gaze rested upon one man in particular. He was rather a plain sort in comparison to his fellows. He did not distinguish himself at a spear-throwing, and considered himself a less than successful hunter. He was pensive and often sang quietly to himself. He would often go off on his own and dream about something all alone. One day Lilith went out to meet these people. She had collected living gifts from the forest and carried them in a withy basket out to a crowd of people. Men standing around a baby elephant they had slain and arguing arcanely about something. And he was there among them, her chosen one. At the sight of her, all voices suddenly became mute. Now Lilith was a woman of exceptional beauty. She had not taken the steps to veil her exposed slender figure. Unaware of the hold carnal desires had already secured for themselves over male human beings. They crassly thrust themselves at her in mass. Putting her gifts down on the ground, she noticed the fire of fleshly lust and desire burning in their eyes. Even he, her chosen one, ran after all the rest. Even from a distance, Lilith still felt how forcefully the wave of aggression touched the delicate strings of her soul. Taking a step back, she suddenly turned and ran from the whole approaching horde of warriors. Seething with lust, they kept up their chase for a long time. She ran without any difficulty in breathing and did not tire out, while those in pursuit were dripping with sweat. But they were not to lay hand on Lilith. Those who thirsted to capture this beauty were unaware of the truth that to know beauty one must include such beauty within oneself. And the warriors, tired of the chase, losing sight of Lilith, they started wandering back the way they came and went astray. Eventually they found their way. All but one. Weary from running, he sat down on a fallen tree and began to sing. Lilith quietly concealed herself and recognized the singer as the one her heart felt a yen for, who had also given chase after her with the other men in the crowd. Nevertheless, she still allowed him to catch sight of her at a distance to show him the right way back to his camp. And he followed, but did not run after her. Upon arriving at the edge of the forest and seeing his camp and the campfire burning there, he forgot everything and started running toward it. And Lilith watched as her chosen one ran off. Her heart would beat in an unfamiliar way, or all at once stop, as Lilith repeated to herself, "Be happy among the others, my beloved, be happy. Oh, how I would love to hear not a sad tune, but your gladsome croon here in my forest dear." All at once the runner stopped and turned back toward the forest, as though pausing in reflection. He looked at the camp and again in the direction of the forest. Suddenly he threw away his spear and confidently took a step forward. He strode over to where Lilith was standing concealed. Lilith kept watching as he walked past her hiding place, her eyes fixed on him. Perhaps it was her gaze of love that stopped him in his tracks. He turned and walked back in her direction. She did not flee at his approach. She placed her still timid hand onto his outstretched palm, and together they started walking hand in hand. Though not a word had yet passed between them, there they were, walking toward the glade where Lilith had grown up. My father, the poet, and my foremother. Years passed, and the line continued. And in each generation of my forebears, one person at least was inspired by the desire to go visit those other people, so similar in appearance, but with quite a different destiny. They would go under various guises. They might mix in with the warriors or the priests, or pass themselves off as scholars. As poets, they shone with their poetry. They tried to let people know that there was another path to man's happiness, that the one who created all was right with them. Only they need not hide themselves from him and pursue their vain mercenary interests or cherish other entities in place of the Father. They tried to tell others and perished. But even when a man or woman was left alone, through their love they would find a friend among those who lived in a different lifestyle. And so our line continued, and with our thinking and our way of life true to our pristine origins remained unchanged in the end. Chapter 13. To feel the deeds of all mankind. "Wait, Anastasia," I cried out after a thought hit me like an electric shock. "You say they all perished? And that's the way it's been for millennia? And that all the attempts were unsuccessful and all mankind is going its own way?" "Yes, all the attempts made by my foremothers and forefathers were unsuccessful." "That means they all perished?" "All the ones perished that went out among the people and tried to talk to them." "So that means just one thing. You will perish too, just like all the rest. You have started speaking out. And to hope for anything here is just silly. If nobody ever succeeded in changing the world or society's way of life, then what makes you think you... Why talk prematurely about death, Vladimir? See, I am still living, and you are here along with me, and our son is growing up. But what makes you so confident? What makes you believe that you'll win out where all your forebears failed? All you do is talk, just like they did." "I just talk. Is that what you think?" At some point you should pay closer attention to the sentences I use. They are not for the intellect. They contain no information which has not been set forth before. But people read them, and many experience an emotional stirring within. That is all on account of the way they are constructed, so that people can grasp a great deal between the lines. The poetry of their own soul fills in the gaps, whatever is not explicit in the actual text. And now it is not me that is telling him about the divine truth. The readers are discovering it for themselves. Their numbers are multiplying at an ever-increasing rate, and now there is no diverting them from the path of the dream which belongs only to God. My mission is not yet accomplished, but already the Creator's desire has come true in many hearts, and that is the most important part. When the heart aspires to something in a dream, invariably, believe me, it must all come true in life. Then tell me, why wasn't everything set forth in such sentences before this? I do not know. Perhaps the Creator has shone forth with some kind of new energy, an energy that tells us anew about something we see around us every day, something we see but do not pay sufficient heed to or reflect upon. And my feelings do not deceive me. I have the clear feeling that He is accelerating all His diverse energies once more. A new dawn is coming for all the earth. His earthly daughters and sons will experience life as it was created by the energy of the divine dream, and both you and I will play our part. But most important are those who have become the first ones to feel those thoughts between the lines, the thoughts that the energy of the Creator has implanted in people, like the music of the soul. It has all happened. It has all come to pass. People are already aspiring to create a new world in their thoughts. You're talking in very general terms, Anastasía. Tell me specifically, what should people do? What kind of world should they build, and how? So that everyone in this world can live happily ever after. I cannot tell you more specifically at the moment, Vladimir. Treaties of all kinds are not hard to find in the life of mankind. Many of them have been such that people have fallen down and worshipped them. But none of them makes any sense. Treaties have no power to change the world, and just one point will serve as a confirmation of that. What point? I don't understand. The point in the universe designated as a universal limit, the point where all mankind is standing at the moment. And everything depends on the direction in which it takes the next step. All this shows that there is absolutely no sense in tracks. Ever since the beginning of creation, the whole of mankind is attracted by feelings alone. Hold on a moment, hold on. What about me? Do you mean to say that I have not done everything in my life by virtue of my mind? Vladimir, you, like everyone else, have changed, with that mind of yours, the interrelationship of material things around you. You have been trying through material means to experience sensations which every man knows intuitively, sensations which everyone is seeking but cannot find. What kind of sensations? Sensations everyone is seeking. What are you getting at? At what people felt back then, in their pristine origins, when they were still living in paradise. So, are you trying to say I've worked to achieve many things through the power of my mind just so I could discern these feelings of paradise? But think for yourself, Vladimir, why you did all the things you did. What do you mean, why? Just like everybody else, I've been making a living for myself and my family in order to feel that I am no worse than anyone else. In order to feel, you said. Yes, that's what I said. Now try to get this through your mind. In order to feel the deeds of all mankind. What do you mean, all? Even the deeds of drug addicts? Are they too part of the search for such sensations? Of course, just like everyone else, they are aspiring to find these sensations, only they are going about it their own way, subjecting their bodies to torture, taking poison in the belief it can help them, just for a moment, experience an approximation of a great sensation. And the drunkard, oblivious to everything, winces and drinks his bitter poison only because the search for beautiful sensation lives in him too. And the scientist harnesses his mind and comes up with some fanciful invention, thinking that this will help him find satisfaction along with everyone else, but to no avail. Over the whole course of its history, Vladimir, human thought has gone and invented a tremendous number of senseless things. Just think of the multitude of objects surrounding you right where you live, and each of those objects is considered to be the achievement of scientific thought. Think of the labors of the multitude of people behind its production. Only please tell me, Vladimir, which of these objects has made you happy and satisfied with life? Which? Well, maybe not a single one, if you look at them individually. But taken all together, these objects do a lot toward making life easier. Take the motor car, for example. You get behind the wheel and you can go where you like. It can be cold and raining on the street, but in the car you can turn on the heat. It can be hot and sweaty outside, but inside all you have to do is turn on the air conditioning and you have a nice, cool ride. And in your home, in the kitchen, for example, there's lots of appliances to help women. There are even dishwashing machines to spare the housewife that particular care, and vacuums to clean the rooms through and through and save lots of time too. Everyone knows that there are a lot more objects out there like these that can make our lives a lot easier. Alas, Vladimir, ease makers such as these are quite illusory. Man is obliged to pay for them day after day through suffering and a shortened lifespan. In order to afford these soulless objects, people are obliged to spend their whole life slaving over joyless tasks. The more these soulless objects appear all around us, the more clearly they show the degree of man's misunderstanding of what constitutes the universal essence of being. You are a man. Take a careful look around you. In order to produce yet another mechanical object, whole factories are built, spewing out deadly pollution, killing the water, and then you, a man, are obliged to spend your whole life in joyless work for their sake. They do not serve you, but you them, inventing, repairing, and bowing down to the things you make. In the meantime, Vladimir, tell me, who among your great scientific minds invented this particular mechanism for serving man, and at what factory was it produced? Which one? The little squirrel with the nut, the one just below my hand. I looked at Anastasia's hand. She was holding it outstretched, palm face down, about 1/2 meter above the ground, and on the grass, just below her hand, a little red squirrel was standing on its hind paws. In its front paws, the squirrel was holding a cedar cone. Its head was first tilted down toward the cone, then perked up high, with its sparkling round eyes fixed on Anastasia's face. Anastasia smiled, looking down at the little creature. Without a stir, she held her hand balanced in the same position as before, and all at once the squirrel put the cone down on the ground, started working on it in some way, using the claws on its front paws to take off the scales and pull a tiny nut out of it. And once more the little creature stood up on its hind paws, raised its head, and seemed to be holding the nut out for Anastasia, as though asking her to receive it from its paws. But Anastasia continued to sit on the grass as before, without a stir. Then the squirrel lowered its head and quickly bit into the nutshell, and, after peeling off the shell, placed the kernel of the nut on a broad leaf. Then it began pulling more and more nuts out of the cedar cone, each time biting onto the shell and laying the kernels on the leaf. Anastasia then put her hand down on the grass, palm upturned, whereupon the squirrel hastily transferred all of the shelled kernels from the leaf onto her hand. With her other hand, Anastasia gently stroked the furry little creature, which had become stock still. Then it came even closer to Anastasia and stood, apparently trembling with joy before her, and looked her in the eye. "Thank you," Anastasia said aloud to the squirrel. "Today, my beauty, you are better than ever before. Go on, go about your business, my busy little one. Find your chosen one, my beauty, one who is worthy." And she motioned with her hand toward a nearby cedar tree with huge spreading boughs, whereupon the squirrel began skipping about, twice executing a circle around Anastasia before bounding off in the direction indicated by her arm. With a flying leap onto the trunk, she finally disappeared into the cedar's leafy branches. In the meantime, on Anastasia's hand, now stretched out toward me, lay the neatly shelled cedar nut kernels. "Well now, that's quite a mechanism," I thought to myself. "It collects the product, delivers it, even separates it from the shell. This little creature doesn't require any maintenance or repair, and it doesn't consume any electrical energy." After trying the nuts, I asked, "What about the great military leaders, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, the ones who started wars? Hitler, too. Don't tell me they were searching for a feeling of their pristine origins." "Of course they were. They wanted to feel that they were rulers of the whole earth. Subconsciously, they felt that this kind of sensation was related to the one everybody is intuitively searching for. But they were mistaken." "Mistaken, you say? What makes you think that? After all, nobody has yet been able to take control of the world. But they took control of cities and whole countries. They would fight and win battles over cities, but the satisfaction they derived from their victory was fleeting indeed. And they kept on warring, aspiring to even greater conquests. Their invasions of a country, almost inevitably more than one, would bring them no relief but only more grief, and the fear of losing everything, and once again they tried seeking satisfaction through military deeds. Their minds were so immersed in vanity that they could no longer count on them to bring them to the dream of the great divine sensations. All the military leaders of the earth met with a sad end, and the whole history of the world, insofar as we know it today, bears this out. Unfortunately, however, the vanity, the ramblings, and the parade of mercenary dogmas do not allow people living today to discern where exactly the divine sensation awaits them along the way. Chapter 14. Dining in the Taiga. Each time I visited Anastasia in the taiga, I would invariably take along things to eat. I would take preserves, hermetically sealed biscuits in a plastic wrap, and sliced fish fillet in a vacuum pack. And each time when I got ready for the trip back, I would find my reserve supplies unused. And each time she would slip some treats into my backpack. These generally consisted of nuts, fresh berries wrapped in leaves, and dried mushrooms. Russians are accustomed to eating mushrooms, well-boiled, fried, marinated, or salted. Anastasia eats them in their dried, natural state, without any processing. At first I was afraid to even try them. Then I tried them, and they were okay. Once a piece of mushroom is softened from the saliva in the mouth, you can suck on it like a candy or swallow it. Later I even got so I liked it. One time I was traveling from Moscow to Gelendzhik by car for a readers' conference. The whole trip I lived on mushrooms Anastasia had given me. Alexander Solnitsev, the director of the Moscow Anastasia Center, was at the wheel, and he ate some of the mushrooms too. And during my talk at the conference, I invited the audience to try them, and the people didn't shy away. They kept taking one piece each until my supply ran out, and ate it on the spot, and nothing bad happened to any of them. In fact, I don't remember any occasion during my visits with Anastasia where we actually sat down for the specific purpose of eating. Whatever Anastasia offered me, I would just try on the spot, and I never felt any real sensation of hunger. But this once. At the time, I was probably too engrossed in pondering the meaning of Anastasia's prayer to notice how she managed to spread such a huge table, if indeed one can call it that. There on the grass, On a variety of leaves, both large and small, lay a host of delicacies. They filled an area larger than a square meter in size, and everything was beautifully laid out with tasteful decor. Cranberries, huckleberries, cloudberries, raspberries, black and red currants, dried strawberries, dried mushrooms, some kind of yellowish paste, 3 small cucumbers, and 2 medium-sized red tomatoes. These lay among a multitude of clumps of herbs decorated with floral petals. Some sort of white liquid, looking not unlike milk, stood in a little hollowed-out wooden bowl. I couldn't tell what the scones were made of. There was honey in the comb, too, strewn with multicolored grains of pollen dust. "Seat yourself down, Vladimir. Try this God-given daily bread," Anastasía invited, with that sly smile of hers. Wow, I couldn't restrain myself from exclaiming, "That's really something, and you've laid it all out so beautifully, just like a good mistress of a feast." Anastasía bubbled with childlike joy at my praise. Then she burst out in laughter, her eyes still fixed on the table she had laid out. All at once she threw up her hands in the air and exclaimed, Oh, you see, here I am supposed to be a good feast mistress, and yet I have gone and forgotten my spices." "You like a lot of hot spices, do you not? You like them, yes?" "I do. And here this good feast mistress has gone and forgotten them. Give me just a moment, I shall correct my mistake." She took a look around her, ran off a little ways, and tore off part of an herb, then did the same in another place. Then she reached out into the bushes and tore off something else, and presently laid her find down amongst the cucumbers and tomatoes, a little bouquet-like clump of various herbs. Then she explained, "These are spices. They are hot. Try them if you like. Now we have everything. Take a taste of everything, Vladimir." I picked up a cucumber, surveyed the variety of taiga foods spread out before me, and said, "Pity there's no bread." "Bread there is," Anastasía responded. "Look here," and she handed me some kind of tuber. "This is a burdock root. I prepare it specially so you would find it a replacement for tasty bread and potatoes and carrots." "I've never heard of burdock being used for food." "Try it, not to worry. In times past, people used it to make a great many tasty and healthful dishes. Try just a small bite first. I have been keeping it in milk to soften it." I was about to ask where she got the milk, but once I took a bite of the cucumber, I couldn't say another word until I had finished it off, and without bread yet. I took the bread replacement tuber from Anastasía, but I could only hold it in my hand without trying it until I had finished eating the cucumber. You see, this ordinary-looking cucumber was utterly different in taste from any other I had ever eaten before. This taiga cucumber had a pleasant, unique fragrance. You're no doubt aware that cucumbers grown in hothouses taste quite different from those raised in garden beds in the open air. The ones growing in the open have significantly superior taste and fragrance. But Anastasía's cucumber surpassed all the open-air cucumbers I had tasted before, and possibly by an even greater margin of difference. I quickly picked up a tomato, tried it, and polished it off on the spot. Its taste, too, was extraordinarily delicious. Like the cucumber, it was far tastier than any other tomato I had ever eaten. Neither of them required any salt, sour cream, or salad oil. They were delicious in and of themselves, just like a raspberry or an apple or an orange. Nobody would ever think of either sweetening or salting an apple or a pear. "Where did you get these vegetables, Anastasía? Did you run down to the village? What kind are they?" "I grew them myself. You liked them, did you not?" she asked. "Like them? I've never had any like these before. That means you've got a garden plot or a hothouse? What kind of tools do you use to dig your beds? Where do you get fertilizer? At the village?" "The only thing I got at the village was some seeds from a woman I know there. I prepared a spot to plant them among the herbs, and they grew. The tomatoes I planted in the autumn, then hid them under the snow, and come springtime they began growing. The cucumbers I planted in the spring, and they, like those little ones, managed to ripen. But what makes them so delicious? Is it some new variety? Just an ordinary variety. They are different from those grown in a typical garden plot only because they are provided with everything they needed during their growth period. In garden plot conditions, when people try to isolate their plants from contact with other species and accelerate their growth by using fertilizers, the plants are unable to take in everything they need to become self-sufficient and please man. And where do you get your milk? How do you make your scones? I thought you didn't use any kind of food from animals, and yet here you've got milk. That milk is not from animals, Vladimir. The milk you see before you is from a cedar. How do you mean from a cedar? Can a tree actually give milk? It can, only not all trees by any means, but cedars, for example, can. Try it, there's so much included in this drink. The cedar milk before you can nourish more than just your body. Do not drink it all at once. Try 1 or 2 sips, otherwise it will fill you up so much that you will not want anything else. I took 3 sips. The milk was thick with a pleasant, slightly sweet taste to it. I also felt a warmth from it, but not the same as from warmed cow's milk. This tender, inexplicable warmth ran through my whole insides and, I think, changed my mood at the same time. This cedar milk is delicious, Anastasía, delicious indeed. But how does one milk a cedar to get this liquid? There is no milking involved. You must keep grinding the milk kernels of the nut with a special stick in a wooden mortar, calmly, thoughtfully, with a good attitude, and you keep adding water, little by little, living spring water, and you end up with the milk. Are you saying people have never known about this before? Many people knew about it in past times, though even today people in the little taiga villages sometimes drink cedar milk. People in the cities prefer a different kind of diet altogether, one less healthful but more suitable for the purposes of conserving, transporting, and cooking. What you say is quite correct. When you live in a city, you have to do everything quickly. But this milk, wow! What kind of tree is this cedar? The cedar all by itself can give us nuts and oil, and flour for scones, and milk. And there are a lot of other unusual things that a cedar can supply. What unusual things, for example? You can make superb perfume from its ether oil, self-sufficient, healthful perfume. Nothing artificial can come even close to its fragrance. The ethers of the cedar represent the spirit of the universe. They can cure the body. The ethers of the cedar can protect man from harmful influences. Can you tell me how to extract perfume like that from the cedar? I can, of course, but you, Vladimir, should have a little more to eat. I reached out my hand to take another tomato, but Anastasía stopped me. Wait, Vladimir, not that. How do you mean? I prepared a variety of things for you so that you could first take a taste of everything so that it might cure you. What might cure me? Your own body. Once you try a bit of everything, the body itself selects what it needs. You will feel like eating more of what you have chosen. Your body itself will determine what it needs. Wow, I thought, for the first time she's gone against her own principles. What happened was that twice before Anastasía had cured me of some internal ailments. What kind of ailments exactly, I don't know, but I used to get bad pains in my stomach, or my liver, or my kidneys, or maybe all of them at once. The pains were bad, and painkillers didn't always help. But I knew that when I came to see Anastasía, she would cure me, something she does very quickly. But on the 3rd occasion, she refused to treat me. She didn't even completely remove the pain with her gaze, saying that if I wasn't going to change my lifestyle or eliminate what was causing me to be ill, there was no point in treating me, since in that case the treatment would only harm me. I got really angry at her and never asked for her treatment again. After returning home, I did find myself cutting back a little on the amount of smoking and drinking I indulged in. I even fasted for several days and felt better. And then the thought came, we don't have to go to a doctor or some other kind of healer every time we feel ill. We can take hold of our own selves when we feel pain pressing down upon us. Of course, it would be best for it to not press down at all. I wasn't able to cure myself completely, but I decided not to ask Anastasía for help. However, she agreed to treat me, all on her own. But you did say you wouldn't give me any more treatment or even take away the pain. I shall not take away your pain any longer. Pain is a conversation between God and man. But I can now, since I am just offering you food, that does not go against nature, although it does go against them. Who's them? The ones who thought up the regime that is so harmful to man. What harmful regime? What are you getting at? At the fact that you, Vladimir, like the majority of people, feed yourself according to an established dietary regime, a very harmful regime. I guess some people follow a kind of regime. There are lots of diets out there for losing weight, or for gaining weight. But I eat what I want. I never read up on any regime. I go into a store and I pick out what I like. That is right, you go into a store and choose, but your choice is restricted to what is offered by the store. Well, yes, in the stores today, everything's neatly prepackaged. Because of the tremendous competition, all the producers nowadays try to please the consumer and do everything for the consumer's convenience. Do you think it is all done for the consumer's convenience? Sure. For who else? All systems under a technocratic way of living invariably work only for themselves, Vladimir. Do you consider it convenient to get all those lifeless frozen or tinned foods, or water that is half dead? Was it your body that determined the selection of foodstuffs available in grocery stores and supermarkets? The technocratic world system has taken upon itself the role of supplying you with the necessities of life. You have agreed to this. You have complete faith in it, to the point that you have even ceased to wonder whether you have been supplied with all the necessities. But we're still alive. We aren't dying from using these stores. Of course you are still alive, but the pain, where do you think your pain comes from? Think about where pain comes from with the majority of people. Disease and pain are not natural for man. They are the effect of choosing the wrong path in life. Now you will be persuaded of that for yourself. Here before you lies just a small sampling of what the divine nature has created for man. Just try a little bit of each thing, and then take what you like with you. 3 days is sufficient for these little herbs, which you yourself will select to overcome your pains. I began trying a little of everything while Anastasía was still speaking. Some of the clumps of herbs were tasteless, while others I felt like eating more of. Before my departure, Anastasía put the things I had taken a liking to into my backpack. I ate them over a 3-day period, and the pain completely disappeared.